Hey everybody, I'm Tarl Yarber with Fixated Real Estate, and we're going to be going over in so many details the interior red flags when it comes to doing your due diligence on properties to purchase. There's so many nuances in this business, and there's so many things that you can be looking for when you're mitigating risks on buying a property. One of the first things most people ask me when it comes to buying and investing in real estate is how do you understand the rehab and construction component of this business? And most of us do not get into this business because we want to be really good at construction. In fact, I hate that part of this business. But if you want to get good at BRRRRs, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, or flips, multifamily, doesn't matter. You or somebody on your team needs to be good at analyzing risk when it comes to construction. So I'm going to be talking about the red flags on properties, specifically on the interior of the properties. We did a previous video all on the red flags of the exterior, so be on the lookout for that one. It was part one of this. This is part two of this series where we're going to go in depth and detail of the interior on these projects so you can find all the red flags you need to be able to mitigate risk and either say yes to a property quickly or no as fast as possible so you can move on to the next one. So let's get after it right now. Okay, so talked about the exterior. There's only so many big red flags there. There's plenty of things that could be wrong with an exterior, but big ticket items, there's only so many, concrete, whatever. There's all sorts of other things that can go into it. But let's say now you're going into the interior. Sure, you got the fire damaged house, cool, forget that one for now. What are all the things that you should be looking at that are red flags on an interior that can make or break a deal? Let's talk about the less obvious one. When you're planning out your after repair value, your ARV, it's determined typically on the highest and best use of that particular property. If you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, that the best ARV you're going to get for it is going to be able to add another bedroom to it, make it a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, then you're looking for a way to add a 4th bedroom. Let's say you have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house and you need to add a 2nd bathroom. So you go from a 3-1 to a 3-2. Those are factors that you need to know before you go into the project as best as you can. And when you do that, you're looking to see, is it even possible to make a 3-bedroom into a 4-bedroom or make a 1-bath into a 2-bath? And that might make or break your deal. For subject of time or all that great stuff, we're not going to go into how to do that part. I've done a ton of videos on that on the BiggerPockets channel. You can look for those on all my deal analysis ones. I broke those down big time. So floor plans is definitely going to be a red flag. If you can't make the floor plan work, you need to look at it. But more importantly, when you have a cosmetic rehab, you got to look at what's a non-functional floor plan. There are properties out there that you walk into and you think, what was somebody thinking when they designed this house? And if you're thinking that when you walk into it as an investor, somebody else is going to think of it later if you're going to sell it or try to rent it out, right? People are going to live in this thing. So you definitely need to look at a factor right away. Red flag number one is a non-functional floor plan. It's just quacky, messed up, super outdated, whatever. Those are things you need to look at. And I'm not going to show you a bunch of pictures of unfunctional floor plans because they're out there and you can find them or you've walked them. Second thing, which I already brought up, has to do with your bedroom bathroom count. That has a lot to do with whether or not you can make a floor plan work, your maximum count. You're also confirming if the records that you were given was this is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Well, when you walk into the house, make sure there's actually 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms in it, right? Or maybe you get a surprise and actually it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. That's a bonus, right? If it's that way. But if you're being told and all the records are saying it's a 3-2, confirm it's a 3-2. That is a huge red flag when it's not. And also make sure they're legal bedrooms. So that's another big red flag. Is it a legal bedroom or not? They might be saying it's 3 bedrooms, but if one of the bedrooms has no closet and no window in it, it's not a legal bedroom, especially, and I'm not gonna say it depends on what state it is. That's every state out there. So definitely check that out. Are they legal bedrooms or do you need to bring them up to code? Looking for non-conforming uses like unpermitted buildings, unpermitted additions. Those are all factors you really need to look at. Non-conforming use. Let's say somebody is saying that this is a duplex. Well, in reality on zoning, maybe it's actually a single family home, just somebody's renting it out as a duplex. That's non-conforming. Your lenders aren't going to agree with that, right? So definitely look into those things. But let's go into some fun pictures and some hidden things that you could find on a project instead that might make you change your mind to whether to buy it or not. Okay, so here's an obvious one. Trash, nastiness, right? You can walk into this property just like on the outside, you see a bunch of trash on the inside. Now, for some of you guys that have done this business long enough, you know, looking at this, you're like, that looks like a normal house to me. That's not that messy. And you're right. I have some massive, nasty hoarder houses that we've dealt with. I just didn't pull any of those pictures out for you guys, but you get the picture. You got some major trash outs, costs a ton of money, yada, yada, yada. This one's a little bit more subtle. For those of you guys that are experts, you start to notice all these little golden, delicious droplets everywhere. That ain't dirt, right? So what is that? You walk into a project, you already smell what that is. Now, pictures don't do that justice, but you can also tell right away as a red flag that if you see a lot of animal feces all over the house, then you're dealing with a major red flag of not only just trash out, clean out, but the biggest red flag of them all is your smell. What are you going to do about the smell in the project? It sucks, and there's a lot of people out there. I've seen it on BiggerPockets blogs. I know people that have done this, that spent a ton of money fixing up a house that was like a hoarder house that also had a lot of dead animals in it, or in this case, a lot of feces. And then they fix it up, but they can't get the smell out, and they've already rehabbed most of the house. The smell's still there. That's not a good place to be in. You deal with the smell up front. So that's a big red flag. How much is it going to cost you to get that smell out of that project? Side pro tip, rip everything out, scrub the walls, put kills everywhere, oil-based kills, right? And lots of ozone machine time, right? That is a very, very good way to get rid of the smell on these projects, right? But I digress. I've done videos on that stuff before, so check them out. But this is going to be a red flag. You're looking at it, you're also smelling it, so you're using all your senses when you're figuring out red flags on a project. Here's another red flag. Look, that's me. That's me in 2015. That's 2015. Back when I had hopes, dreams, I was vibrant, youthful, excited about the business. What am I pointing out there? Duh. Ceiling height. So this is a non-conforming building. This is a ceiling height issue. This is supposed to be the kitchen. So you walk into the kitchen and you go from a 10-foot ceiling, which is right over there in the living room, and to basically, let's call it like just barely over 7 feet kitchen ceiling. And it also slopes down. It goes all the way down to I think about 6.5 feet over here on this side of it. So if you're looking at getting the highest best use for a property and the kitchen ceiling slopes down to 6.5 feet, right? That's probably going to be an issue. Now, spoiler alert on this one, we ripped off this entire portion of the property and rebuilt it. But that was a big red flag that we had to renegotiate into the deal because tax records said that it was X amount of square footage, had a kitchen, all that stuff. You show up, ceiling height's an issue. This is not going to work. We're never going to be able to sell this project for what we want to sell it for without fixing this issue. All right, now what about this one? So this is a basement, right? Yes. But what's up with these stairs? So you guys might see, yeah, there's unfinished work. That's fine. Unfinished basement is just part of the budget when you're looking at it. The bigger issue is these stairs. You're basically climbing a mountain to go up these stairs. Massively not to code, right? So if you were trying to sell a house like this and bring it up to code or even get permits on it, no city inspector in their right mind is going to allow you to keep these stairs. And if you have to move these stairs or rebuild them, that's major permitting, and you have to bring it up to basically new code standards, which is going to make these stairs stick way the heck out, right? It might even make it to where you can't even do it because there might not be room to be able to put the stairs anywhere. So if you're dependent on that and you plan on getting permits on a project, then you might kind of have a lot of issues getting these stairs to code based on your city. Now, this is not grandfathered in. Trust me, nobody's allowing this in. Somebody did this themselves without getting any permitting with the city. Now, if you can maybe not finish the basement or whatever, but even let's say that you tried to sneak it on the radar and do this whole project without permits, what seller is going to let their kids run up and down this freaking thing, right? Or sorry, what buyer? What buyer is going to be excited about a beautiful, finished, expensive house, and all of a sudden they have to basically mountain climb and do stair climbers the whole time just to get in and out of the basement? That's an issue, right? So you've definitely got that's a big red flag that I've seen a lot of people, and including myself, suffer from. All right, let's do a little bit less obvious, right? You walk into a house and you see this. Now, what am I looking at? I'm looking at, cool, a little accent wall, whatever. It's old school, probably going to remove it. The windows, they look kind of aluminum, no big deal. Definitely messed up, garbage everywhere. It's these holes. Some people, yes, will just get pissed off one day and start punching holes in their walls, right? Absolutely. In this case, maybe kicking them, right? But why? Why are there so many holes? If I go to the next picture of this project, you can see that there's holes everywhere, right? So why are there holes everywhere in this project? Oh, and what is this one? This one's kind of an obvious one. You guys guess yet? Why are all the holes around all the electrical units and outlets and the panel? You guessed it. That's a big one. Somebody came in here and ripped out all the wiring in the project. So you got a full rewire going on this project right away, which is going to bring us to our next topic here in a second, which is the electrical components and the hidden things inside of a property. Some other things you can note too, of course, trash out, but also the popcorn ceiling. You might need to scrape that. Those are costs. But the thing that you might want to look at for sure goes into the major systems, your MEPs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And in this case, it's pretty obvious to most, hopefully most, that there's no electrical even in this project. And if you bought this project without paying attention to that, then you're going to find yourself a full rewire without the budget. All right, so major things for interior. You're going to also not only go over the stuff I talked about, I showed you some cool pictures, all that great stuff, but some obvious things. Major cosmetic repairs. How much do you got to do? Do you got to do like a full upgrade of the kitchen, the bathrooms, every single thing? Do you got to do all flooring? What kind of flooring? Those are all big ticket items that, you know, you got a budget based on your budget that you have for your projects that can make or break a deal. So when you're analyzing these deals, you really need to look at these things piece by piece and what are the big tickets. But your biggest big tickets, honestly, on your interior for a project is typically going to be your MEPs. That's your mechanical, electrical, and your plumbing. So I'm going to go into a little bit of that right now so you can see the difference between good and bad. But at the end of the day, hire a homeowner inspector if you don't know these things, or get a good general contractor that you trust and like, or other investors that are really good at what they're doing that are willing to walk the project with you to help you dig into these so you don't get surprised later in your project. It's worth paying a homeowner inspector and then walking the project with them and taking lots and lots and lots of notes. That's probably the best tip I can give you in this entire video. Take lots of notes walking with a homeowner inspector, and you'd be surprised how much you're going to learn. So eventually, you do that enough, you don't need to walk with them anymore. So let's jump into electrical. Some very quick little tips on this type of stuff that I want you guys to see. First, this is an exterior panel. Exterior, interior. One of my acquisitions guys, I'm not going to name drop him because this is not a good comment about him. But one of my favorite things that he ever did that was really stupid is he was walking a project and he always has to take photos. And I'm like, hey, where is the photo of the electrical panel? He's like, there was no electric panel. I'm like, bro, there's an electrical panel on every house. No, I swear to God, this house did not have an electrical panel. I'm like, yes, it does. Go back to the project and find the electrical panel. Did you look at the outside of the house? No. Spoiler alert, there's also electrical panels on the exterior of the house, not just on the interior. One way to find it, look for the electrical mast or look for the meter, and it's probably somewhere around there on the interior or the exterior, close to the meter. So this panel here, this is a electrical panel on the exterior. There's a few red flags on it. First one for us, we've done this business long enough. This is an old school panel, right? That typically is going to need to be removed. There's different versions out there. This is the Federal Pacific, Zinsco, a bunch of different ones that are really old, and also potential fire damages, insurance issues, that kind of stuff that you're probably going to have to replace, especially if you're going to sell the project later down the line. Most home inspectors are going to call this out, this type of panel out, and request it to be replaced. And almost every single city inspector is going to tell you to replace it too. Another thing, this little orange thing down here says that it's winterized. That has to do with somebody came in, shut the power off, winterized the house because it's been vacant for a long time, probably a bank-owned property. A little bit less obvious here, so we got a house out down to the studs. We're looking at the electrical components. Now, hopefully, we see these electrical component issues before we rip off all the sheetrock on a house. But you could look at this one here and you could see a few things, right? This has Romex, right, which isn't bad, going into a new outlet, right, which isn't bad. But there is a bad thing here. This little piece of wire here is called knob and tube. That is a bad thing, going from a knob and tube into a Romex line, right? And you can see over here too, this is knob and tube wiring as well, right? Which is an old school electrical wiring that was used basically in the early 1900s, late 1800s. And if you're getting a property that you're planning on fully rehabbing and gutting, you're typically going to run into some knob and tube on your older houses, not your newer ones. A lot of your newer ones are going to have cloth wrap or aluminum or Romex and that kind of stuff. Those are usually pretty okay, good to go. But we're looking for my neck of the woods, older houses. We're looking for that knob and tube so that we can get rid of it. Like this is spliced, different versions of it. This project here, like you say, the same thing. We're looking at electrical, right? You can see there's a bunch of Romex everywhere, whatever. That's okay. That's no big deal. But it's probably not done right, right? You can also see another component, which we're going to get into in a second, which is the plumbing side of it. You have water lines, right? These are all things that you could see because we ripped everything out, right? But how do you see this stuff and how do you look for these things before you rip everything out? Because you can't rip everything out on a project you're inspecting. So let's go to one of the easier ones to be able to investigate, in my opinion. That's going to be your plumbing, right? If you look at this, I could see that there's two factors here. You have some ABS, right? But you also have some galvanized. So at one point, somebody tried to replace a little bit of this plumbing, right, with old school plumbing that was already there, which was galvanized. But how do you look at for that, which before you rip into a project? So what is galvanized plumbing? Let's talk about that. Galvanized plumbing is this old school metal, right? Galvanized metal that they used for plumbing for a very long time. They used it for vents, they used it for drains, and they used it for water lines. Now, the bigger issue for most galvanized plumbing is going to be your water lines. And water lines are, have notoriously with galvanized stuff, notoriously gets rusted out on the inside. It can get I can't remember what it's called, electromagnetic crap or whatever. That basically is this white stuff that rusted out on the exterior. You can see it sometimes, gets all crusty and might have like rust coming out of the water faucets and all that kind of stuff. That's all bad, right? So if you had to choose between water lines and drain lines and vent lines when it comes to plumbing, for galvanized, you typically want to get rid of the water lines on a lot of them, at least what we do when we're trying to get a higher ARV on a project. So that's something we're going to look at. Now, you could find if something's a galvanized plumbing without ripping out the entire house. If you have a crawl space like this, you can just have somebody stick their head in the crawl space and see what the water lines look like, right? And so forth. You can also see from the vents of the roof, which I showed you guys in that first house, the little vent sticking out was galvanized. That's a clue, right, to be able to look for. You can look for drains, right? You can look underneath sinks, right, to see what's popping out there. Another cool trick is to go to the water tank. So this is an electric hot water tank, and this is galvanized lines coming out of electric hot water tank, right? So if they're galvanized here, they're galvanized everywhere. Little tips and tricks to be able to find whether or not your water lines are galvanized, right? Now that could be a red flag, or it could be no big deal. It's something that we look at. If they're galvanized for us, we're getting rid of them because we don't want to deal with them later. And in our market, we need to replace them. Galvanized in other markets might not be a big deal at all. It might not be a red flag, but something to note. What about cast iron, right? Cast iron is very popular for old school stuff. And there's nothing wrong typically with any kind of cast iron drains. And you can keep a lot of those, right? But if you're replacing, but a lot of times they're rusted out. They could be broken. There's things that can be messed up on them. And you might need to replace those too when you're doing a full plumbing remodel. You might open up a bathroom and see that you got all sorts of fun stuff going on here with galvanized lines, cast iron lines. It's all a mess. And that's why you might get a plumber to go like, we need to replace all this stuff, which is why it might cost a lot of money. But you're not going to see this if you're analyzing a deal on the outside. But you're going to see it and get surprised by it later if you have an old school house with galvanized plumbing, cast iron plumbing, all that great stuff, and it's totally rotted out and nasty from looking at it at either the water tanks or from underneath. Then you're probably not going to be surprised when you open up the floors or open up the walls and see that it's just as bad in there as well. So something to budget. Now let's say that you find, I don't know, newer plumbing like this picture here. You have newer ABS and you have newer PEX, lines running everywhere. And you also have a bunch of squiggly electrical everywhere too. So you're like, oh, cool. The plumbing looks newer. There's ABS and there's PEX. That's fine, right? And at first glance, you're like, sweet, saving money, right? But the question I would have when I'm seeing this type of spaghetti mess everywhere, especially this PEX right here, is the question is, did they install it right? Is it to code, right? Is it going to pass inspection, right? All those factors. And that could be a big factor when it comes to doing your rehabs, is you might think you have new systems, but if they were done wrong, or they were done not to code, or they were done by an amateur, then it's going to cost you more later to fix it. Just something to pay attention to and why you want an inspection when you can. Let me show you something, one of my favorite ones. Check out this thing. So this is a electrical meter mast that is in the attic space of a house, right? And the wires, the main line, which is right here, is actually going through the roof into the house, attaching to the meter, and then going down. Somebody built, this used to be a torch down roof. Somebody built a roof on top of the roof and left the electrical mast there. That's kind of a fun thing to find and was a surprise to us when we dug into it. All right, so I went over electrical and plumbing. The last is mechanical. Now, mechanical is going to be your HVAC, your AC, your venting, all that kind of stuff. And those are a little bit harder to find on the venting side of it, but easy to find with your furnace, your AC unit, all that great stuff. You can see if you can make or break. Does it work? Does it not? Is there heat in every room? Like in the Seattle area, not every project has AC, because we actually, believe it or not, don't really need AC there, except for like 2 days a year. So a lot of people don't have AC, but everybody needs heat. So is there heat in every room? That's actually on one of our checklists, right? Because if there's not, you got to fix that. Believe it or not, you'd be surprised how many houses don't have heat in every room out there. So we're going to find that. So we're gonna check that out. Look at the furnace. Is it old? Is it new? Is it 80%? Is it 95%? Like all those things. Is the AC working, right? Is it there? Because a lot of times it gets stolen in some parts of the country, right? I want to show you guys a funny photo though of a picture of a house that we did analyze and what they had for a furnace, right? So check this out. So this is actually a wood burning stove that they put underneath where a large oil furnace used to be. So they would set the wood, they set the wood on fire, and then they have the heat radiate into the venting here and then spread out throughout the house, right? You catch that, you're like, where's the furnace? Well, I guess the wood burning stove is the furnace, right? So that's kind of a fun one that we found. Another thing some random things that might happen is water intrusion. This is actually a real house that we bought full of water, right? I'm not going to go into all the details of how to discover water intrusion, but this is kind of a big one for sure. Another factor that I want to show you guys is something called sewer repairs. So maybe something that's a big red flag for you guys is your sewer. You might not see it, right? Because you're not going to see it. But you should probably do a sewer scope, especially if it's a house that's older, like pre-1980s or whatever, or 1970s. You should probably get a sewer scope on most of your projects if it's an older house. If you live in like newer areas or most of your projects are 80s and above, you probably don't need a sewer scope. But a lot of our projects are 40s, 50s, 10s, 20s, like that kind of thing. And we need a sewer scope on those. Why do I say that? Check out this project here. This is a house that we fully rehabbed. We didn't get a sewer scope on it. And we've had to get a sewer scope when we went to sell the project because the buyers got a sewer scope on it. And it ended up costing us $13,000 to replace the sewer on this when we could have gotten that negotiated in the front end. And the reason for that is because we had it in the city of Seattle. This house is on a downward slope. The sewer is way below grade. And we had to do a bunch of shoring up, or we didn't. We hired a company to do it. And they had to dig super deep to get in there and fix this sewer. $13,000 later, after I sold the house, right, I'm paying that bill because we didn't get a sewer scope. Well, guess who gets sewer scopes every time? Here's another pro tip. Your sewer scope is a huge negotiating tool to be able to work a price down on a project for older houses. Okay, we're wrapping up. There's a lot here, and I do my best to give you guys as many details as possible on these videos to really help you out. And I just have a tendency to verbally vomit on all this stuff. So bear with me. If you guys are still with me on this video, I hope you liked it so far. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe at the bottom, ask questions, that type of stuff. You guys know if you watched past videos of mine, we do a lot of detail on this stuff. I want to end on a few other small red flags that can lead into big issues later that are very easy to not notice when you're just looking at the house only. Those issues are simple. Are you on a busy street or not? Can you hear a busy road or not? Those are big factors. Your neighbors, not just your neighborhood, more importantly, your neighbors. Is the house next to you a parking car lot, right, where they're basically just a bunch of junk cars? Are they a hoarder next door to you? Are the neighbors super nosy and going to be all over your project? That's not always bad. That could actually be really good. That saved us a few times because nosy neighbors also kick out squatters. But sometimes, like, maybe you don't want a nosy neighbor, depending on the type of rehab you run. More importantly, are the neighbors going to decrease the price of the house? Right? Because maybe they're hoarders, maybe they have junk cars everywhere, maybe it's a big, huge trash yard, who knows? Big factor in all that type of stuff. Are there other unconforming buildings on the property, right? Is it supposed to be a single family, but there ends up being two houses on it? These are all things. Driveways, runways, like distance to schools, all those kind of factors. Those are all huge pluses, minuses, things that you got to pay attention to on these projects. I have gone through a lot with you guys on this one, and I really hope that you guys appreciate this. These are things that right away, we have a whole list, and most of these things that I just went over with you guys are on this list, plus a few more things that right when we walk on a property, we're looking, we're checking. Red flags, red flags, red flags, big tickets, looking for all the big ticket rehab stuff as fast as possible so we can either say yes or no on a deal. Lots of red flags and lots of big tickets does not mean the deal's bad. It just means you have to get the property for less, right? So you can build it into the actual budget of the project. Big ticket items are really, really bad if you didn't expect them. So remember that. It's better to know you have to replace the roof up front or know that the foundation is messed up front than to find out later after you've purchased the property. I skydive, some of you guys might do it too, and you know this. Once you've jumped out of an airplane, you typically can't jump back in. Once you've bought a project, you can't just give it back. So once you've already bought the project, you got to deal with it. You have to handle it. And if a roof is bad and you didn't expect it, if his window's bad and you didn't expect it, if the electrical is bad and you didn't expect it, those things are going to come back at you and bite you in the middle of the project through change orders and potentially kill the deal for you and make you write a check at the end of the deal instead of receive a check when you sell the deal or rent it out. I hope you guys like it. Make sure you guys comment, like, subscribe at the end of this video, or here in the chat, whatever. I'm on YouTube. And follow me on Instagram at Tarl Yarber. I do as much as I can on there, so bear with me if I'm not posting enough. And I will see you guys on the next video.